Okay, so ready. Pleasant good afternoon, all poultry farmers and stakeholders. Those of us who are joining us online, we also say pleasant good afternoon and welcome to you. So, folks, it's very much wonderful to see that you have heeded the call and you guys came out. So, the first thing I want us to do, let's give ourselves a round of applause. So without further ado, I'd like to ask for a volunteer to say a word of prayer so we could start. Please. If you mind, if you stay right there, go ahead. All right, so Ms. Sapphire Alexis, she'll be ushering the Lord's presence. Thanks, Ms. Sapphire.
Our dear, kind, and loving Father in heaven, we are indeed grateful for our many blessings and pray for Thy Spirit to be with us this afternoon. Lord, bless us as we talk about agriculture and poultry and find ways to grow and to learn and to understand how to progress in this field. And we pray for these things most humbly in the sacred name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fire. So, folks, we now have some welcome remarks by Mr. Benson Patrice, our Senior Agriculture Officer for Carriacou and Petite, Martinique. Mr. Benson.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, my voice is a bit hoarse today, but good afternoon, everyone. Let me welcome you all in a very special way to this poultry consultation here at the Lorenas. Today we have some very special people, which I would like to first recognize as part of our protocol list. We have a very distinguished lady with us, Miss Gemma Bean Thomas. Her name would have become a household name now in Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique, because we all would have heard of her and her battles regarding her dismissal from the public service and subsequent victory at the court. And of course, today she continues to serve the country, not as a active civil servant, but in her capacity as a consultant. And she has been here for two particular different assignments. She's been here to conduct the public service as part of the team that conducted the public service public service orientation training. And of course, she's here today to be part of this poultry consultation. So we have, let's make good use of her. We're going to hear from her in a little while. So Ms. Gemma Bean Thomas. Also, we have Mr. Gavin Pierre. Spoke to him on the phone first time I met him. And Mr. Gavin Pierre is a poultry development officer. Okay, so I'm sure that in the future you're going to work along with him very closely to help develop the poultry in Carriacou. We also have Ms. Paula Phillip, who I've been speaking to also. She's a planning officer within the Ministry of Agriculture. She's here also, and you're going to be hearing from her today as well. We have also a man who normally visits Carriacou whenever we ask him to, Mr. Nugent Bernard. He's among us. He's a livestock specialist and works with also the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, not the Ministry of Agriculture, Grenada, and I think he's doing more consultancy work at the moment, and we're happy here to have him in Carriacou here once again with us. Cousin Mina, part of the ministry, my dear cousin, right? Happy that she can visit with us to do this very important work. Now, just a few words on some history as far as our poultry is concerned in Carriacou. Now, doing some research, I've surprisingly stumbled upon some information that people who are here, who are much older than me, maybe 70s, 80s, would be able to identify with, or they might have known. As far as our poultry is concerned, it is not a new thing. For I have discovered that there was a Carriacou Farmers Association, which was established since 1972. And the secretary treasurer of that association was a gentleman, he's died now not too long ago, by the name of Mr. Ben Coy. They started with a poultry initiative at the Limley spot. They were given a spot at the Limley Livestock Station, and they established a poultry farm there. That is in 1972. When I read further on, I discovered that they had at one time, or at any one time, within 1 year of establishment, they had over 4,000 birds. And on a weekly basis, they produced over 14,000 eggs. The business started growing so much that they immediately thought of expanding. So they started doing meat. So they started slaughtering and selling at a depot somewhere here in Hillsborough. And I came to realize also that they did not just remain with poultry. They seemed to be very ambitious at the time. They had thoughts, I don't know if it materialized, but they had thoughts, or they were thinking of going into mutton, pork, cattle, and other forms of meat also. I don't know if it happened, but that was one of the plans for the future. They claim that they got a start from government initially, but by year 2, they were able, just the members of the association, to come together to build a second pen right here in Carriacou. When I read that, I say, I wonder, well, what happened to our farmers today? It's very difficult for them to hold a little group together. And look what used to happen in the past. No wonder why we used to have so much animal and animal products to export in the past. I don't know if we can go back to those days, but it goes to show us that we had a sense of association, we had a sense of business, we had a sense of togetherness, working together within the agricultural sector to make things happen. And those days the population was not as big as now. So I don't want to say too much, but just to lay the background, just to lay the foundation that it is not a new thing for us. What could come out of this would be a much better thing in that we can organize ourselves, and today, of course, this document will teach you how you can be part of the poultry, or how your activity could fit into the national poultry policy, which of course I hope that you would embrace. I hope that you had the opportunity to look through it. You have probably sent it online for you. I'm just seeing it for the first time. And of course, your questions and concerns will be addressed by the other people who are here. So with these few words, I thank you very much for coming, and I hope that you take advantage of the little time that we have here together and learn as much as you could, right? And see where you can fit in the wider scheme of things as we try to develop the poultry industry in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I thank you very much. I apologize for the voice again, but so that's how it is sometimes.
Thanks much, Mr. Patrice. So, folks, what we are here to do today is very much simple. We're here to hear from you guys so that you could make your input into the poultry policy. But first, I want to do an overview of your industry. Based on our findings, we've been here since Tuesday, and we've been visiting farmers up to last night. And so I'll give you a brief overview of what exists as an industry in Carriacou today. So the poultry industry in Carriacou predominantly consists of small backyard entities, with the largest farm being able to accommodate approximately 1,000 birds, and smaller operations ranging from 25 to 100 birds, with the majority of farmers accommodating an average of 50 to 100 birds. So if we're going to go back as to what Mr. Patrick just said, we're looking at a mere drop in the bucket in comparison to what we used to have. Because if a group of farmers was able to come together and do 4,000 birds, according to him, I don't wonder what happened. So in visitation to all these farmers, they all had a few noticeable problems that they voiced. A few of these are, one, the high cost of feed. Feed cost is extremely high as it comes from mainland Grenada with 3 separate transportation costs. We have to transport it to the boat has next transportation costs, and then inland Carriacou transportation costs. Processing. All farmers undertake their own processing, most without the availability of a plucking machine, and would have to manually hand-pick feathers, which is a very long, tedious task, resulting in farmers doing very small batches when they process. However, there is one young farmer who has a small butcher shop, very commendable, and does parts, but also he himself has to do the processing of his chicks at his farm and then transport them to his shop where he do the parts in. The third one is financial access. Financing is not readily available, and as such, farmers bear their own financial startup and in few cases cost of expansion. I would say that is not exclusive to Carriacou. We enjoy basically the same thing in Grenada. So there are similarities between the industry in Grenada and Carriacou. So we could both take similar approaches to render. Cheap imported chicken. Due to cheaper imported chicken, the local or fresh market is very small, except for a few preferential buyers. So often farmers would have a very slow moving stock, which is a further cost because they have to refrigerate to keep. Inputs availability. Availability of farm equipment on island, example waterers, feeders, and technical help to assemble and also do the farm visits, the extension work. There is not much of that. So in summary, poultry farming in Carriacou is primarily at subsistent level and is impeded by high production costs and very low profit margins. The industry is also of a seasonal nature where the farmers cater for market demand mostly during festive periods. Overall infrastructure upgrades and general development is urgently needed, together with a centralized slaughtering facility where birds can be processed to a consistent standard, quality, and in keeping with the guidelines of food preparation. I wanna go over that one. Overall upgrades and general development is urgently needed, together with a centralized slaughtering facility where birds can be processed to a consistent standard, quality, and in keeping with the guidelines for food preparation. Farmers, I want us to let that part sink in. We have no choice. We have no choice. If we can't prepare food up to that accepted standard, we may as well continue importing. Because even though even if the imports get here 10 years after, it's still been processed at that standard. It's still been held at that standard. It's still been shipped at that standard. It still gets to us in a box and it gets to us frozen. Yeah? Even though it can be classified as not fit for human consumption, we still can't argue much. Because if you look at the way we're going to process chicken, it's very questionable as well. And that is something we have to accept. The first thing we have to do if we want to change anything is accept where we are and our ills, and then after we accept, we assess how to fix, and we all partake together in a fix. So we have been having discussions with farmers, and many have expressed interest in supporting, in forming a local cooperative. I'll go over that again. Many farmers express interest in supporting the forming of a local cooperative for the local poultry industry in Carriacou to streamline operations and also alleviate processing and marketing burdens. This will allow for the purchasing of feed also and inputs in bulk, which would aid in the lowering of the cost of production. Now, for us to do that, we have to, how do you say it, we have to be in cahoots. Everyone has to be in cahoots, which includes the local supermarkets and the local importers. They have to be on board. So this has to be a collaborative effort. And I would like to applaud the young gentleman, Baba. And he has taken steps to start purchasing his chicken. I think this is a step in the right direction, and this is where our industry needs to head. Now, we have to disregard local poultry as only being able to be served as fresh chilled. The majority of poultry that comes in frozen, and that is the larger part of the market. That's undeniable. That's undeniable. So if we want to actually increase to the point where we could have local poultry served in Carriacou only, we have to accept that there are some standard and quality measures that needs to be put into place, and we have to do it. It has to have a buy-in from all the stakeholders. So I saw your hand up, so go ahead, let me hear you.
Yes, I'm curious. I mean, what's the distinction between the margin on frozen per pound versus fresh killed?
Well,
I have a follow-up question as well, but I mean, I guess we got to start with the margin, right? I mean, how much money is left on the table? Because from that, we start to build out our productivity, our infrastructure, our distribution, our co-op, et cetera. I mean, isn't that the right place to start?
yes, I wouldn't say no. Also, the right place to start could be ascertaining how much poultry do we import. So I would love to ask the importers and the supermarkets that are represented, that they be open in sharing those information with us, so that we actually have an idea of where to start.
Well, we're the same discussion. What I'd like to do, I literally had this conversation at lunch. And we're talking about the distinction.
The mic is on? I think not. So put it on the mixer. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate. So basically, we were talking about the margin, but I had lunch with a group of business people earlier today. We were talking about the quality of the meat, and compared to alternatives in other countries, it's not really up to global standard, which I think we could remediate. We could fix here. Okay?
Right.
But the question is, as you ask the local grocers, the distributors, I believe that there's a premium market for better quality prepared meat, ideally freshly killed, or meat that's been handled but been basically butchered to North American standards or other alternative standards, so that we can enhance our margin. Because without that margin enhancement, we have really no capital to do the things we need to do as a virgin, developing industry. So again, I'd like to know from the players locally if they believe, in fact, on their real experience, whether there's a viable market for fresh killed at a higher margin price as opposed to just imported cheaper quality and cheaper refrigerated meat, which I think for the restaurants is really, an inferior product to deal with.
Okay, so we're not into the question and answer section yet, although I took his, so I don't want us to ward off into that. But I'll answer his question. Now, there is definitely a distinction between fresh killed and what is imported as frozen. Now, if I could elaborate just a little, not too long. The reference price for chicken is of Georgia ducks, of the ducks in Georgia. And if you look at it in terms of fresh chicken, if that is imported here, we'll be paying about $15 to $20 a pound for chicken. Point blank. Right? If you don't want to have to take my word for it, just go and reference it. The price for fresh chicken of the ducks of Georgia. All right? This is US. No, I mean the final, what I'm saying here? No, that would be EC. Yeah. So, also, fresh chicken would definitely have a higher margin selling price than, but at the same time, we don't want to only produce fresh chicken. There is a market for it, but the wider market is going to be for frozen meats. All right? Then if you're talking across the board and pricing, the fresh chicken always go with a preferential market. People who can afford it, people who are looking at healthy options. Yeah, a healthier option. So, but the regular Jane, the regular John on the street is going to go for frozen meat. All right? And for us to do that, we have to mass produce. We're going to have to mass produce. So I want us to, at this juncture, let's stick with that. And let's get into the meat of the matter, which is the poultry policy document. And then afterwards, we could do the questions and answers. And not only that, leave here with an agreement. Leave here with an agreement as how we're going forward. I don't want this to just be you guys come here and hear what we have to say. Make your inputs as well as to what you would like to see inside of the poultry policy document. And also, most important, leave here with an agreement to form something that would be tangible going forward, representing Carriacou as strength. Yeah, farmers coming together to make something positive happen. And I believe that could be the flagship for a lot of other things or other sectors in the agriculture industry.
On that note, to re-engineer the question, what would you, if you know what's going on, you know the opportunities.
So
What would you like to see come from this group?
So that we re-engineer our efforts, get our act together, and actually execute on the strategy.
So, as I said earlier on, most farmers have expressed interest would love to see something of a cooperative nature happen. All right? So, at the end of this, I would love to see or get from you guys a yes, we are interested, a yes, let's get together, a yes, let's form it, a yes, let's take our market. But first, let's have Ms. Bain present the draft poultry document, and then you guys put your input, and then we move from there. So, without further ado, Ms. Bain, floor is yours. No, because it's not wired. So, go ahead.
don't go on. Okay.
You're good?
Yeah, I'm good. Good. Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's nice seeing so many smiling faces here this afternoon. Mr. Patrick has exposed me one way or the other, given my full background, but most people know, so, you know. Right. Over the years, I have been to Carriacou on many occasions as a permanent secretary, working with the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Carriacou and Petite, Martinique Affairs. I know we worked with Ms. Lendo Sylvester, who was permanent secretary for a number of years. As a matter of fact, when Ms. Lendo Sylvester became a permanent secretary, I was a senior administrative officer. I was not a permanent secretary as yet. So I became a permanent secretary after Ms. Lendo Sylvester. And then I later became the secretary to cabinet. And then I later was removed from my post. And then, as Mr. Patrick said, we went to court and everything, and I was vindicated, and, you know. So the story is there. It's out there.
Back to zero.
That's my story. So I have been working as an independent contractor since 2014 to now, not to now, to 2022. Then I was asked to assist in the Ministry of Agriculture. That is one ministry that I served as permanent secretary in prior to the end of my time in the public service. And so from July 2022 to now, I have been working alongside the staff of the Ministry of Agriculture. And one of the areas that we have worked on is the poultry policy. And that is why I'm here today to present on the poultry policy. And Mr. Patrick said for the last 3 days, Monday to Wednesday, I was a presenter in the Public Service Commission orientation training for the public service. So I presented on the structure of the public service. So I've switched now. So I've moved from public service and I'm into poultry and the poultry policy. And so we are here today because we have circulated online, and now you have had a hard copy of the draft poultry policy. And our purpose today is to present the policy, to discuss the policy, and to get your input into the policy so that we can finalize. You will realize that the one you have still have draft on it. So we have not moved to the final document. After we would have completed all our consultations, this is the first consultation, we intend to do one in each agricultural district in Grenada and then a national one, following which we will finalize the poultry policy and present to Cabinet for approval and then implementation. So today, we are going to look at the importance of a poultry policy. We are going to look at a background to the 2023 revised poultry policy, look at the details of the policy, the action plan, and the way forward. And in looking at poultry policy, I found this quotation from an unknown writer. It says, in the world of poultry, every day is a new hatchling of opportunity. So today is a new hatchling of opportunity. We have the opportunity to make a contribution to a poultry policy that will serve as the basis for the development and improvement of the poultry sector in Grenada. And so today, our presentation will provide you the stakeholders in the poultry industry with an opportunity to become more involved in the policies that will shape the direction of the poultry industry. Now we could sit in the ministry and write a policy and take it to cabinet, have it approved, and push it down your throat and say, this is what we are being guided by. You may get resistance. You may say, I never heard of this, and so forth. So we always believe in consultation, consulting with the people most affected, and you are the immediate stakeholders. You have an opportunity, a hatchling opportunity, to contribute to the policies and strategies that will govern the poultry industry, to contribute to the development of the poultry sector, to contribute to the reduction in the high food import bill, especially for chicken, and to contribute to sustainable development in the agriculture sector. And agriculture and food and nutrition security, they are seen as an important pillar in national development. So why is this poultry policy important? It is important because poultry farming is a vital component of modern-day agriculture. It plays a crucial role in producing eggs and meat and contributes significantly to food and nutrition security. And the data will show that we eat a lot of meat in Grenada, which includes Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We eat a lot of meat, no matter which one. But chicken is one of the main meats that we go after. Yes, we eat the mutton and the pork and the beef, but chicken seems to be the highest consumed meat. And chicken is important. It's a source of protein. The eggs are important, source of protein also. And we also always say, or always heard growing up, that you need protein for good bones and strong teeth and, and for the development of the body. So we need chicken. And so poultry is important. Now there are many players in the poultry industry. We have the poultry farmers, we have the consumers of poultry, all of us. We have the wholesalers, the retailers of chicken, the importers, the distributors, the feed company that sells the feed to us. We have government, we have poultry associations, and we have the people. So we have a lot of players. And when we have a lot of players in any activity, we always need guidelines. We always say, I guess we say it here too, that too many cooks spoil the broth. So if everybody cooking, everybody just deciding what to do and how to do, sometimes we get nowhere. And so government has an important role to play, bearing in mind that we have all these players in the industry. And so government is responsible for policy review and formulation, for laws and regulations. And all of this is in relation to the poultry industry, for standards and guidelines on service delivery, for national plans and programs, and for monitoring and evaluating policies, programs, projects, and activities. And government is represented here by the ministry. So when we come to you from the Ministry of Agriculture, which has overall responsibility for the poultry industry, we are representing government. And so that is why whatever policy is developed eventually goes to the Cabinet of Ministers for approval. And once it is approved and it becomes policy, it comes back to the ministry for implementation. So I will now provide some background into the revised policy. Because we are saying a revised policy because there was a previously approved national poultry policy. So there is a 2017 policy. It was approved by Cabinet in February 2017. I'm not certain if you would have gotten copies of that policy. But the policy was not fully implemented, and the reasons why it was not fully implemented are not fully known. But the policy, that same 2017 policy, recommended that it should be updated annually. So that means we have 5 reviews late. So we should have reviewed the policy already. However, between 2017 and now, we had COVID-19 from 2020 to 2020. We still have little remnants of COVID-19. It has not fully gone away, but by and large, we seem to be back to our normal way of life. COVID-19 would have had an impact on the poultry industry, and Mr. Pierre spoke a little of it in his presentation. Between 2017 and now, we have had the Carriacou 25/25. I'm not sure if you know about that. It's a Carriacou decision signed by the heads of governments of Carriacou in February 2022. And that Carriacou 25/2025 is aimed at dealing with the high import bill for food within the whole Carriacou region. Because yes, our import bill is high, but it's a regional problem with the high import bill. And so this decision was taken so that they can have a reduction in the high import bill. And we also had a new government, and I think I have it wrong. I have June 2023 here. It's June 2022. And the government came in with a transformation agenda. So all these are reasons for a revision of the 2017 national poultry policy. Now let's just look at the impact of COVID-19 on the poultry industry. Mr. Pierre referred to it. Only 30% of the food consumed in Grenada is locally grown. The remaining 70%, valued at over $130 million annually, which includes poultry, are imported. So I repeat, 30% of the food consumed in Grenada is locally produced. The remaining 70%, valued at over $130 million annually, inclusive of poultry meats, are imported. Now, COVID-19 had an impact on the demand for poultry, and so because there was a reduction in the activities at the hotels, at restaurants. St. George's University suspended classes for a while, and there was the reduced spending power of local consumers. Some people were not employed, and battling COVID and all of that. There was a reduction in spending power. That resulted in some of our local poultry producers kind of going under, because during the COVID period, some of the local poultry establishments closed for a while, and as we speak, some still have not returned to production prior to COVID-19. And so COVID-19 exposed our level of food insecurity. We were already food insecure because we depended on imports, and COVID-19 exposed it more. Now, the CARICOM 25 by 25, it agreed that the region, the CARICOM region, will treat the poultry sector as a special sector, and that swift action must be taken to ensure that the existing regional enabling environment is made more favorable for regional poultry producers. Now, this is something that our leaders signed to. Amen. And so the targets for poultry production based on the CARICOM 25 by 2025 is a 50% increase in production and productivity and a 25% reduction in fresh produce imports. Right? So the new government, what are the policies of the new government? The new government policy, agriculture and food and nutrition security are a main pillar of the transformation agenda. The government policies to make food security a top priority, to reduce the food import bill, eat healthier, and support local production. The government policy encouraged the private sector to invest in the agricultural sector. And in February of 2023, the then Minister for Agriculture met with poultry producers in Grenada and gave an undertaking to have a functional poultry policy. And so since then, we started the work to review the 2017 poultry policy. We anticipated that we would have completed by now, have these rounds of consultation, and be at the point of implementation. But sometimes in the public service, we do firefighting management. And every time something comes up, we drop everything, out the fire, and then start again. Something else comes up, we fight another fire. So we are at the point where we have fought so many fires that we are back to poultry. And we are hoping to take this to completion. And so we have started today with this consultation here in Carriacou. We will do the rounds in Grenada, have a national consultation, and move forward with the poultry policy. So what does the 2023 revised national poultry policy envisage? So the vision within the national poultry policy is to make Grenada self-sufficient in poultry production and consumption, produce and consume locally. The mission is to support Grenada's food and nutrition security, food safety, economic well-being, and job creation by establishing a nationally self-sufficient system of poultry production, distribution, and consumption through the development and use of legislation, policies, and incentives. So, it all pointing to local. And everything I'm saying here is in the document that you have. It is written in the document. So we just extract and present it. The goal of the policy is to increase production of local poultry over the next 5 years, 2024 to 2028, so we start in this year, thereby reducing total imports by 40% over the same period on the journey to self-sufficiency in the long term. And this 40% was also in the 2017 policy. So if we had implemented the 2017 policy, by now we may have been a bit more self-sufficient as it relates to poultry production and consumption. So how are we going to attain this 40% reduction in increase in poultry production. The proposal is to develop a sustainable and robust poultry industry. Mr. Pierre spoke about, we have a lot of small farmers in Carriacou. And Carriacou has its part to play in that sustainable and robust poultry industry. And so we have to look to see how can we increase production. What it is that what is the enabling environment that government must create to enable poultry farmers to be able to move from backyard farmers doing 20, 40, 50 to maybe 1,000 birds. How can we reduce the cost of production for poultry and its byproduct? And the how is to strengthen its industry coordination, to promote the development and application of supporting government policies, and this is one policy we're talking about, but there might be other policies that we'll have to look at in support of this poultry policy. Regulations and legislation. Is there anything in our legislation that is preventing farmers from being able to achieve the level of productivity that they would? Or is there anything in our legislation that is encouraging rather than discouraging the import of the frozen chicken? So all of these are things we will have to look at. Then we also need to develop and implement a framework for local poultry consumption, because it's very easy to say produce, but you produce and no one is purchasing. You do not have a market. Where do you go with all that you have produced? And we have to start. Yes, we eat a lot of chicken, but the chicken we are eating are the imported chicken, not so much the local. Yes, we do eat the local ones, but we also import a lot. We want to do the reverse, eat more of the local than the imported. And how can we foster collaboration between the government, producers, stakeholders, and consumers? And so in the policy, they have certain undertakings put forward in the policy for government. And the first undertaking number 1, is to address the structural barriers that prevent the proliferation of poultry producers and the growth of the sector. And these barriers include access to finance, lack of incentives, unfair competition, monopoly practice, and dumping into the domestic market. There may be more that you may put on the table as we go along. Another undertaking is to promote and encourage the development of domestic food and nutrition security. So not just poultry, but general food and nutrition security. Practicing climate-smart agriculture, reducing import dependence, and generating sustainable livelihoods. Whatever we do should also produce employment, jobs, so that our people will have sustainable livelihood. A third is to encourage growth in the production and consumption of locally produced poultry products. Because, yes, we produce the poultry, but we also have the chicken franks and the other byproducts of chicken that we import and utilize a lot. A fourth is to create an enabling environment to position the poultry industry in the premium markets offering organic poultry products. To formulate a risk mitigation, disaster management, and compensation strategy. And 6, to provide support for the strategic use of renewable energy resources for poultry production. 7, revise, update, and ensure the utilization of Grenada's food-based dietary guidelines and school nutrition policy. Now, both of these are policies that were developed by the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council. They were approved by Cabinet and should be at the stage of implementation. Then we have to educate and raise awareness of the importance of using locally produced poultry and poultry products. And finally, promote, support, and encourage the establishment and development of poultry producer organizations or associations to strengthen the collective bargaining power of members. And Mr. Pierre spoke ably about that. Now, so we have what the policy says. So what are the key strategies within the policy? Here are some of the key strategies. And strategy number 1, same as in 2017, to allocate 40% of the market share for local producers, staged with 30% over the first 3 years, and an additional 10% over the next 2 years. Provide technical support and resources to organize poultry production and processing such that all 30% of the Phase 1 market share target subsistence farmers and cottage processors. Provide support for the establishment of a hatchery. Mandate that state-supported food programs, such as the school feeding program, dietary services for hospitals and other state-run institutions, will give preference to the use of locally produced poultry meat and eggs once availability permits taking effect on July 1st, 2024. And finally, apply appropriate duties, taxes on imported chicken and eggs in the context of existing trade agreements. So we have just outlined what you have written in the document and some of the key strategies. Some of you may have had time to read the document because we sent it out electronically also. Some of you may not have had time to read the document. So what we are going to do now is to give you a chance to have your say. Let us hear from you, from what I have just presented, from what Mr. Pierre presented, from what is written in the document. So Ms. Phillip, you'll moderate for the comments and so from the people. So you will raise your hand if you have an input. Mr. Pierre will give you the microphone and we will take your comments, take notes and be able to review, revise, update what we have written and circulated here to you.
All right,
Okay,
the first question
no,
to get this party started.
just hold a while, please. So good evening, everybody. We want to set some parameters around how we go about the questions. First of all, you raise your hand, and once you recognize, then we'll give you the mic. You'll ask your questions. We're asking that you keep it to one question at a time. After that question is answered, we allow somebody else to ask a question, and if we have time, then we'll come back to you. Okay, so.
Well, Madam Thomas, that was a great introduction. Thank you so much for that detail. My first question is, to what extent, if any, has different contracts been established by the government that the government would provide provisions for local farmers to meet different quotas for different criteria? Has that been discussed, or would that be something we'd need to add for consideration?
I don't know if this is working.
We will need to air it for discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Contracts for practice.
Because just as I have a lot of experience doing that, and I think that would be an important thing that's not included in the documentation I've reviewed so far, but that would provide a lot of liquidity for farmers to get financing and to bring local and regional players to the market if those contracts were established. And there could be a lot of segmentation with different users within the hotel space, education, prison. There's just so many different commercial applications for those contracts to be implemented in the strategy. And again, that would be important for the co-op to actually integrate that thinking, because they would be able to fulfill quotas, drive revenue and capital to basically grow the business, and deal with a lot of the